Sometimes springtime comes in a flash. This is one of those times. Just 6 days ago we had snow on the ground, and now it's in the 60s and 70s this week. Yesterday, today, the next day, and looks like that kind of warmer trend is continuing. So everything's gonna be sprouting here in a hurry, and we need to quickly get into our springtime work, our springtime maintenance here on the farm. So recently it's been nothing but firewood, and over the course of the winter I've just been thinking about growing the firewood business, producing as much firewood as I can. It has become a meaningful source of revenue for the farm here, and I've set some big goals to increase that even further in 2025. But I quickly need to put the brakes on the firewood work because spring's here and we've got lots to do. So we're going to start today with some fertilizer work, and I knew I had some fertilizer here in stock on hand. I need to work through all the old fertilizer first. And lately, the past 2-3 years, I've been using just this little deck box here to store chemicals and pesticides and extra fertilizer in, and that has been fine. So there's been a few 100 pounds of fertilizer sitting in there for a little while. So I just pulled out what I have left. It's 150 pounds. There's a little bit of 18-24-12 and triple 14, 2 bags of that triple 14 and one of the 18-24-12. This product I actually like better. It is labeled as a seed starting formula. We got this from like a landscape supply kind of place that does a lot of turf management kind of work, and this is more for a turf style fertilizer, being a starter fertilizer. But what's good about it for us is that it contains a percentage of the nitrogen, is a slow release product, so it tends to do a little bit better, particularly with our cypress trees. The cypress trees back in this section, these are from here back until that hilltop over there, are all Murray cypress, and then we get into some Arizona cypress back there. They are bronzing pretty good right now with all the cold weather that we had, but I'm certain with a little fertilizer application and with some warm weather over the next 10 to 14 days, these things are going to green up considerably. And these are extremely fast growing trees as well, so probably within the next few weeks we'll come through here and do a little bit of trimming as well. You can already see how some of these have just put on loads of top growth, so we actually need to cut some of this back and give this tree a chance to fill in if it's going to have a good Christmas tree shape. And with these particular trees, they can put on easily 2 to 3 feet a year, and if you're not constantly managing that growth and shaping these trees, they never really get into Christmas tree shape. They look more like a shrub if you don't. So that's what some of the springtime work that we need to do. There's also been, because of the wind that we've had, some trees are leaning and they need to be straightened out. There's some weed control and weed prevention work that we need to do. So there's kind of lots of little things that couldn't really happen when there's ice and snow on the ground. But before the spring growth really kicks in, we need to get out ahead of some of this stuff. All right, now, so I've got my bucket. It's probably got 20 pounds of fertilizer in it, and I've got my cup, and I'm just going to walk back to the last row of trees and start at the back and work my way forward. And I have also in my other hand, same hand that's holding the camera, a fiberglass stake, because when my bucket runs out of fertilizer and I need to walk back and refill it, sometimes it's hard to remember where I left off. So started using this little stake just so I could leave it next to the tree where I need to pick up with my refilled bucket. These trees back here are looking rough. This first row, I think I actually shared last year, this first row just got annihilated by the deer, and I left all the damaged trees. I fertilized them last year. I trimmed them up, trimmed all the dead stuff off, and they're actually, kind of coming back. Will they ever make sellable Christmas trees? Odds are pretty low, I think, on that one. But if they keep coming back every year and keep rubbing these same trees, and that kind of protects the trees behind it, we'll just keep doing that. So one question I've gotten before is, how do you know how much to apply? We've gotten soil tests here before. It's actually been probably 2 years since I got one, but I'm assuming not much has changed. And based on that soil test and the fertilizer recommendations in that test, we know what type of fertilizer and how much fertilizer to apply. So I took those test results, which had a fertilizer recommendation in there that said X pounds of fertilizer per acre, and I broke it down on the square foot level. And if you look at a small tree, it might only have a fertilized area of 3 or 4 square feet. And you break it all the way down, that might only need 1 ounce of fertilizer. And then you get up to the medium-sized trees like the one behind me, and it needs more like maybe 8 to 10 fertilized square feet, maybe 10 to 12 if you're going all the way around the perimeter of that tree. And you take that same calculation of X amount of fertilizer per square feet. So a couple years ago when I first did this, I realized, what about 2 ounces or 4 ounces of fertilizer looks like and feels like, and now that's how much I apply to each tree. A full cup like this is about 8 or 9 ounces depending on how full it is. So 1 full cup is going to get me at least 3 to 4 trees, sometimes 5 to 6 trees depending on how big they are. The bigger the tree, the more fertilizer I'm putting on the ground. The smaller the tree, the less fertilizer I'm putting on the ground. It's sort of scientific, but not that scientific. Bucket's empty, left off at this tree. We'll go refill the bucket. Another question I get is, couldn't you just broadcast the fertilizer instead of spreading it by hand? Absolutely, nothing stopping you from doing that. Just keep in mind, as you distribute that fertilizer out over an area, you're fertilizing everything where that fertilizer is applied. So all the grass and weeds that are growing up and down the rows are getting your broadcasted fertilizer. So unless you can funnel the broadcast or focus the broadcast towards the tree rows, you're definitely adding a lot more fertilizer to the grass and weeds. And you may also need considerably more fertilizer to cover that added area that you're fertilizing. I found this to be the most economical way to do it, trying to focus the fertilizer around the tree and around the tree only. That way we're not fertilizing the grass and weeds as much, and we can end up using less fertilizer, which saves us some money in the long run. And while there is some money saved on fertilizer, this is a lot more labor intensive. I get that. I don't know who needs to hear this, but it's allergy season, so if you need allergy medicine, start taking it now. So this block of trees is now done. That took about an hour and a half. It is over 400 trees in this block. I used just over 100 pounds of fertilizer. So we're sitting right around 2 ounces a tree, which is right about where I want to be. So all these cypress trees are so fast growing, and I've shared this before, but in case you're newer to the channel, this might be your first time hearing it, these trees need to get trimmed at least 2 or 3 times a year in order to help them get into their Christmas tree shape. And here's an example. This height here needs to get trimmed, and we'll cut this back probably to about here. One of these lateral branches here on the side will most likely turn up and be the new top for this tree. If that doesn't start to happen within the next month or 2 after trimming, we'll come back through and stake a branch up to make sure that it recognizes that branch should be its new top. But as I was fertilizing, I wasn't even really looking, but I saw lots of little issues that we need to come through here and trim and correct for. For example, this tree here has a couple branches that are kind of growing sideways or growing around inside the tree. That kind of stuff really, it makes a tree difficult to decorate it if you're going to use it for a Christmas tree, and it prevents growth from happening elsewhere because that growth energy is going into that wacky branch. So I like to come through, and some growers might say this is unnecessary, but I like to come through and clean as much of that stuff out as possible, because the tree then is most likely to get a good structure with lots of lateral branches so that you can actually hang ornaments on it, and it'll help it fill out in a nice, clean, and uniform kind of way. I've got a couple of videos on trimming these cypress trees, so if you're interested in that, I can point you to a couple of those. Because they're so fast growing, I've had to learn pretty quickly how to get these trees in shape. By comparison, right over here behind the camera are the very first trees that we put into the ground, which were some Norway spruce, and these were planted spring of 2019, and they're still there's only a few trees out here that are as tall as me, and they're a lot slower growing, and it's going to take longer, or it has taken longer, to figure out how to trim those. More traditional Christmas tree varieties like your spruces and your pines and your firs, it can be somewhat tricky to figure out the timing on when to trim, because it does matter. You want, for example, these spruce trees to make a new bud set for the next year. That's what's here on the end of the branch. So if you trim too late and they don't get a chance to set new buds for the next year, then you're not going to see new growth that next year, and the tree's progress and its growth will be slowed down. And the goal as a farmer is to turn trees over and sell them and make room to plant new trees, that kind of thing. So if we are doing anything that's going to slow their growth, then that's just opportunity lost. So spruces aren't going to get trimmed until summertime, late summer, and cypress, pretty much, though they don't set a bud set like that, they can be trimmed pretty much anytime. And as far as the corrective trimming goes, that can certainly be done anytime. The best time to trim that or do a correction is when you see it. And this block here, now that I'm done fertilizing, I will come back through with a set of hand clippers, a set of shears, and do all of the trimming and correction that's needed on these trees. I've also noticed that some of them need some treatment as far as fungicide goes. So as soon as the weather is appropriate for that, we'll get into that. That won't be too far down the road. So there's no shortage of stuff to do springtime on the farm, and now that it seems like winter is behind us, I'll be focusing more time and energy and making more videos about some of this stuff and fewer videos about firewood, though I still have loads of firewood videos or loads of firewood work to do, which will make videos, and that'll be on the channel upcoming as well. So I know I've gotten a lot of new subscribers lately because of their interest in some of the firewood content and some of the other things that we're doing on the property, but now that springtime's here, we're gonna have to talk more about this part, which is also fun for me at least. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you got any questions, leave those in the comments, and until next time, stay safe. I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.